And now we are going to go over the RBT ethical code. This comes from the BACB. Okay, the BACB, if you go to their website, you can find Code of Ethics. And there's also a book, it's in the 3rd edition right now, about ABA ethics. It costs about $40 for a digital copy. If you're interested in this field, if continuing in this field, I would definitely get a copy. Be familiar with these ethical codes. You can get a PDF online for all the ABA ethics, these ethical codes. Pretty much I'm going to go over them verbatim with you from the code itself. It's broken down into 10 different sections. The RBT or the BACB website has the PDF, like I said, for the ABA ethics code. And on that ABA ethics code, this is for all applied behavior analysis, BCBAs, BCABAs, RBTs. It'll have a section, or not a section, but the codes themselves will have a signifier, a signal that says RBT on it. That means that also it's something that the RBT should understand. Because there are things on there that the RBT wouldn't necessarily need to know or do. But so we're going to go over those codes, the codes that have been signaled that the RBT should know. Okay, ethical code 1.0 is the responsible conduct of a behavior technician. Again, there's going to be 10 of these. There's going to be 10 broad categories. The first category is the responsible conduct of a behavior technician. The behavior technician maintains the highest standards of professional behavior of the professional organization. Okay. So basically what we're talking about here, what we're going to be talking about 1.0, is that the conduct of the behavior technician, how you should conduct yourself, how you should act while professionally engaged. So here are the codes that have been flagged by the BACB that should be known by the RBT in 1.0. There's 1.01, reliance of scientific knowledge. 1.02 is competence. 1.03 is professional development. 1.04 is integrity. 1.05 is professional and scientific relationships. 1.06 is dual relationships and conflicts of interest. And finally, 1.07, we're going to talk about exploitative relationships. Again, we're going to go over each one of these individually. (1.01) Reliance on scientific knowledge. The RBT will rely on scientifically and professionally derived knowledge when making judgments or engaging in professional endeavors. This means that you're going to use things that have been shown scientifically to work when making any decisions about intervention, or if you're engaged in work as an RBT. It is important for our interventions to be based on scientific research. It's based on fact, not opinion. We will use effective interventions instead of ineffective ones. And we want to also remember that particular techniques can change similar behavior in similar other patients. Here's an example for reliance on scientific knowledge, 1.01 in the Ethics Code. Which would be a more appropriate intervention for yelling behavior based on, if we're going to base it on the reliance of scientific knowledge? Should we rub coconut oil on the individual hands nightly, or use a DRL schedule with extinction? Hopefully you picked out the DRL schedule with the extinction option. The reason for this is that a DRL schedule with extinction has been scientifically shown to work on problematic behavior. Again, I'm not knocking coconut oil or anything like that, but it has just not been shown to be a scientifically valid way to decrease behavior. So as an RBT and as a behavior analyst, I make my decisions based on things, or based on what has been shown in the literature or in experiments to be effective. (1.02) is the boundaries of competence. This is the code that refers to working within what you know. All behavior analysts provide services, teach, and conduct research only within the boundaries of their competence. defined as being commensurate with their education, training, and supervised experience. Basically, it's telling us to stick with what we know. Okay, and behavior analysts provide services, teach, or conduct research in new areas, populations, techniques, behavior, etc., only after undertaking appropriate study, training, supervision, and or consultation from persons who are competent in those areas. So basically, if you don't know about it, we go out and figure it out. We go out and find people who do, and either get training from them, have them show us, research it, whatnot. For example, I was working with a student who had an emotional disability, and I had to go out and seek out others who had worked with students like that before I felt comfortable working with them. So an example here would be like Jayla, as an RBT, is asked to work with a blind individual with autism. Jayla has never worked with anyone who is vision impaired. What should Jayla do? So here's an example for 1.02, Boundaries of Competence. Okay. So Jayla, an RBT, is asked by their new supervisor to work with a blind individual with autism. Jayla has never worked with anyone who is vision impaired. What should Jayla do? Okay. She should definitely let her supervisor know that she has no experience working with a visually impaired person and would like training to do so before working with them. Okay, again, she should let that supervisor know. Okay, she doesn't have any experience. She's never worked with someone who has vision impairment. There could be some things that she needs to know. Same things goes if the person was diabetic. Okay, they would need to know how to administer emergency insulin. The point is that you don't want to work with someone or a behavior or something that you don't have any experience with or have never been trained on before. Now, as an RBT, you're getting trained broadly on how to deal with behavior. But that doesn't mean that if you go in and you're going to be an expert on all behaviors. So if you get to a point where there's a case where the person's having extreme behavior, make sure to let the supervisor know. Seek that supervisor out and tell them, hey, look, I'm not familiar with this. Can you give me some additional training? Again, we want to work within what we know, that our boundaries of competence. Ethics Code 1.03 says that we should maintain competence through professional development. Behavior analysts maintain knowledge of current scientific and professional information in their areas of practice and undertake ongoing efforts to maintain competence in the skills they use by reading the appropriate literature, attending conferences and conventions, participating in workshops, obtaining additional coursework, and or obtaining and maintaining appropriate professional credentials. In other words, guys, we're just talking about as an RBT or as a BCBA, we're going to keep up with what the knowledge is. Okay, this is more really for BCBAs, but you should know this as an RBT. I go to conferences. I try to attend as many workshops as I can. Basically, I want to make sure I'm up to date with stuff. Okay, this is a changing field. We always updated intervention types and everything. So it's important to keep up with that, just to know that you're doing, because remember, it's a technology, right? And we want to make sure that we're actually implementing what is essentially the cutting edge research. So again, as an BCBA and as an RBT, we're going to maintain knowledge of current scientific and professional information. Here's a couple of examples. Jill, a BCBA, always reads the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis and make sure add those new interventions based on what she reads. Okay, the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis is scientifically based, so Jill's doing a good job there. Okay, Paul, on the other hand, is a BCBA. She reads sports magazines and will occasionally take the activities in those magazines and have the patient play the sport or whatever because it looks fun. Okay, that might be okay, it might be fun, but that's definitely not maintaining, professional development through the scientific literature. Okay, 1.04, integrity. There's actually 5 different things in integrity, so we'll go over each one briefly. Okay, behavior analysts are truthful and honest and arrange the environment to promote truthful and honest behavior in others. For example, Phil would make sure all his notes are easy to read and makes his billing sheets clear and easy to understand. He is being transparent. He's promoting truthfulness. Okay. B says, behavior analysts do not implement contingencies that will cause others to engage in fraudulent, illegal, or unethical conduct. So here's an example. If Hector had to leave 10 minutes early every day this week, should he let the supervisor know or ask the parents to cover for him? Well, asking the parents to cover for him will be creating contingencies that would be basically leading the parents to lie and be fraudulent. So that would be unethical. So definitely Hector should let the supervisor know and make arrangements. (1.04) Integrity. C. Behavior analysts follow through on obligations and contractual and professional commitments with high quality work and refrain from making professional commitments they cannot keep. For example, Talitha, BC ABA, lives far from her new assessment. She knows that it will be difficult to make it out every week once intervention starts. Should she tell the parents she'll be there weekly to keep them happy, or tell the parents that realistically she can probably make it only every other week and do a phone conference the other weeks? The answer is pretty obvious, right, guys? She should tell the parents that realistically she can make it every other week and have that phone conference on the other weeks. Okay, we want to be realistic in what we can actually do. As an early BCB, when I just started, I tended to make unrealistic expectations. I thought I could fix everything. As I got a little more experience, I started to understand that this code is very important. Okay, that we should only make the commitments that we can actually keep. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you're always going to be perfect. Doesn't mean that sometimes unforeseen things aren't going to come up. But we don't want to overpromise. (1.04) Integrity. D. The behavior analyst's behavior conforms to legal and ethical codes of the social and professional community of which they are members. Essentially, it means that we're going to be following the legal, whatever the law is, and whatever those codes or whatever the ethics are of the community, okay, the professional community of which we are taking place in. So it is your responsibility to know these ethical codes so that you can actually follow them. Okay. And E is, if behavior analysts' ethical responsibilities conflict with the law or any policy of an organization which with they are affiliated, the behavior analysts will make known their commitment to this code and take steps to resolve the conflict in a responsible manner in accordance with the law. Essentially, so we're going to be acting with integrity and honesty, right? We're going to make sure that if whatever association we're in, whatever, or if we're in if our business, if our organization isn't complying with the code, that we're going to make that known and we're going to take steps to resolve that. Basically, remember, this code is like a lighthouse. It's a bedrock. So if the organization that you're in isn't abiding by that, it is your responsibility, or the behavior analyst's responsibility, to get that organization essentially up to standard. Okay. The point is that you can't go wrong if you're trying just to meet the ethical practices. Okay. At the very minimum, you have to meet these codes, and you have to meet the ethical code. And if you can't, if it's not meeting the ethical code, you have to identify that and to resolve it. And how you resolve it has to be in accordance with the law. You can't do anything illegal to make it resolved, right? The point being, though, is that you need to figure out a way to get that organization to the point where they are following the ethical code. Okay? Basically, all this means is we're going to act with integrity, right? Okay, 1.05 is have professional and scientific relationships. Okay, behavior analysts provide behavior analytical services only in the context of a defined professional or scientific relationship or role. When we're providing these services, we're going to use language that is fully understandable to the person, to the families, but this still needs to remain, conceptually systematic. Basically, it means that we still have to stay true to what we're saying, but we need to put it in language that the individual we're, working with will understand. We don't want to use our, our terms to confuse anyone or to make it seem like, something's going better than it really is. Okay, if something's not going well, we need to actually tell them in a way that they would understand. In this way, services are outlined and we use language as understandable, okay, to those receiving the services. We want to be as upfront as possible in all of this. It's very important to develop the relationship with the person you're working with, a professional relationship, and to use words and use language that is informing them what's actually going on. We don't want to beat around the bush. We don't want to be sly or anything. We want to be as upfront as possible. Very important. This is a very important point. In this regard, in work-related activities, behavioral analysts, RBTs, do not engage in discrimination. Okay, we don't discriminate based on age, gender, race, culture, national origin, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, language, socioeconomic status, or any else things that are prescribed by law. Basically, we don't discriminate and we don't harass. I mean, this kind of goes without saying, but again, these ethical codes, need to be written out in such a way that everything is detailed. Okay? We're never going to demean people. We're not going to harass people. And this goes in accordance with the law, in accordance with the organization, all that kind of stuff. The point being, don't discriminate and don't harass. Almost every professional organization is going to have some sort of training on this as well, where about sexual discrimination, about other things. Point being, though, is you don't want to be doing this, right? Practice having good and professional relationships. Professional and scientific relationships. Okay, the behavior analyst will recognize that personal problems they may have and conflicts may interfere with their effectiveness. Behavior analysts are refrain from providing services with their personal circumstances may compromise delivering services to the best of their abilities. This also is important for RBTs to understand. If you have personal issues going on that are going to affect your ability to perform the work, don't start or don't work. Now, I'm not trying to give you excuses not to work. Like, if you're having a bad day, that's not an excuse. But if, say, a family member passed away, or you're having, a high-level marital conflict, or something else that is basically clouding all your thoughts, and for that day or for that week, you need to make sure to tell the supervisor, document it. That's going to go with the organization, what their policies are and stuff like that. But the point is that you should identify that. Now, again, this isn't giving you a blank check to say, oh, I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to come into work. Basically, it's saying, though, is that if you have an ongoing issue or something that's very severe, that the company or the organization is going to understand that, because it's going to interfere with your actual ability to deliver the services. I have an example down here where Gemini, a BCBA, has a son who needs to be hospitalized for the next 3 weeks. Of course, you can't think about anything else, right? So he would take a leave of absence to be with his son. Or when my daughter was being born, I knew that was going to be a big part, big thing, so I took the week off. Okay, because I wouldn't be able to deliver services in a way that would be effective. I'd be constantly checking on, how my wife was doing, how she was doing, how the baby was doing, so forth and so forth. The point being, though, is that if you have something going on in your life that is going to hamper how you deliver services, it's probably best to talk to the supervisor and figure out from there. So again, not giving you a blank check to say, hey, look, anytime you're having a bad day or whatever, but you do want to be aware that the behavior analyst from this professional scientific relationships recognize that their personal problems and conflicts can interfere with their effectiveness, and that we're going to take steps to fix that. Okay. We also want to talk about 1.06, multiple relationships and conflicts of interest. So you have to understand that multiple relationships, having a multiple relationship in a professional sense, can have potentially harmful effects. Okay. So multiple relationship is when it basically is whenever you have a relationship that's not professional with that person, and that can be it can be a very subtle thing. Like if that person even gives you a gift or something that's a multiple relationship. Okay, it's because the exchange of like a gift is not part of the professional relationship. Okay, so even a small little thing that can constitute a multiple relationship, or knowing, for example, I am from a very small town, and so everyone knows each other. So if my patient's parent asks for my wife's email address or something because of something my wife might be doing, like if my wife has a small business or something and that person asks for their email address to contact my wife, that would be a multiple relationship. Okay, I'm only there professionally for the patient. Okay, so you understand as an RBT that having multiple relationship thing can be very harmful. Okay, so behavior analysts must always be willing to understand that, to identify the potentially harmful effects of this. If the behavior analyst or RBT finds that due to several unforeseen circumstances could happen, and a multiple relationship has arisen, they have to seek out ways to resolve it. Okay, and that can be uncomfortable. Honestly, I mean, it can be very uncomfortable. Like I said, I'm very very small town, so sometimes that can be very uncomfortable in the sense that I have to tell them, hey, look, I can't talk to you about this because that would be outside of the realm of this intervention. But in the long run, it's much better because you're not worried about that. You're not like avoiding the person to not talk about it. You just set it out very strict. I strive to set it out very strictly when I start working with my patients. Is that this is only professional behavior. Okay. So the behavior analyst also recognizes and informs clients and supervisees about the potential harmful effects of multiple relationships. Okay, it's one of the things I try to do now when I start cases is that tell them that. And at the end, behavior analysts do not accept any gifts or give any gifts because that by itself defines and constitutes a multiple relationship. Okay, there are some families. I ran into a family very recently actually who basically told me that if someone's going to be in the house, they are going to offer them food. And I told them that ethically we can't accept that food. And if it's going to be an issue, we have to make it part of the intervention. Okay, we have to but it's still up to the RBT to basically say no. They basically have a choice. Like, I don't want that food. But like I said, some families are going to be more pushy than others. And basically, though, I have to outline them, hey, look, we can't accept it. And if I do accept it, I'm going to make it part of the intervention. But by that I mean, let's say a parent offers me, a cookie or something they bake that day. Well, I'm going to say no, or I could say, okay, I'll do this, but I'll make it part of the program for that day where maybe we're discussing, how our snack was or something with the patient. Again, that's going to be very contrived and very far and few between. The basic thing is not to take it. Okay, that's the most important thing. Is just to understand that we're not going to accept any gifts, okay, or give any gifts. So if you see that kind of question where, because you will be quizzed on this in the RBT exam, if you see any kind of questions where if a person wants to give you something, the ultimate answer is no. Okay, that's not part of your professional relationships. Now, if you need a pen or something, if you need a pen for writing down data, like say one of your pens got lost, you certainly could borrow one from the parent. That's a little bit different. The point is that we're not going to have relationships. Don't have other relationships other than the professional ones with patients. Don't take gifts. Don't give gifts, as that does constitute a multiple relationship. So Joe in RBT has a patient whose parents own a winery downtown. The parents wants to give a bottle of wine to Joe as a New Year's gift. Should Joe accept it? No. Okay, he shouldn't, right? He should be as polite as possible and let them know he cannot accept it. Okay, as cool as that would be, as maybe as nice as that would be, they can't accept it. Now, I do want to preface all this with saying, or give, I guess, an asterisk. Well, it's not really an asterisk, but There are times, I will say, give a parent a thank you card at the end of intervention. Thank you for working with us and allowing us into your home. And that's a little bit different, right? That's just a card that says, hey, thank you. It's part of the intervention. Actually, I make it kind of part of the whole service, is that, hey, thank you for letting us do this. And that's as far as it goes. I don't give them a gift or a gift card or anything. It's just a little card, a little paper card that says, hey, thanks for letting us come into your home. Okay, just kind of acknowledgement. Okay. So 1.07 talks about exploitative relationships. 1.07, exploitative relationships. Behavior analysts do not exploit persons over whom they may have some sort of supervisory role or whoever in authority, an authoritative role. Basically, don't take advantage of people that you may have a supervisory role over. So I have an example here. Randy, an RBT and mountain bike enthusiast, had to tell his local BCBA to come to the BCBA because the specialist assigned to the case was having him fix his tires on the bike. Okay, basically the supervisor was taking advantage of the fact that Randy knew how to do that, and Randy kind of felt pressured into doing that because it was a supervisor. So it's very important to in any kind of professional place to not enter into any of these kind of secondary relationships, because that potentially can become exploitative. I always err on the side of caution on this. A lot of people might ask me, what if Randy comes and offers that? The point, I would probably tell him no, probably to kind of decline it, just because you don't want to enter, you don't want that potential, because that kind of plants a seed to eventually being, hey, look, this could become exploitative, especially if you have a supervisory role for that. So again, you're going to avoid exploitative relationships. Now, as an RBT, as far as working in your professional capacity, you're probably not going to have a ton of situations where you're supervising someone, depending on the company. But if you get moved up and you are a supervisor, this definitely comes into play. And it kind of goes without saying, right? Behavior analysts do not engage in sexual relationships with clients, students, or supervisees. Again, it has to be said, because of course these relationships are going to impair judgment, okay? And they can very quickly become exploitative. Behavior analysts, of course, we're going to refrain from any sexual relationship with clients, students, or supervisees for at least 2 years after the date the professional relationship is formally ended. Okay, that's an important point, right? Is at least 2 years has to pass from any kind of professional relationship for there to be any of that stuff going on. So, again, I err on the side of caution. I always tell people don't at all, but the actual ethics code says behavior analysts will refrain from any sexual relationship with clients, students, or supervisees for at least 2 years after the date the professional relationship has formally ended. Yeah. And finally, behavior analysts don't barter for services unless there's a written agreement in place for the barter. Okay, this has to be requested by the client or supervisee. It's customary to the area where services are provided. So, for example, there's some areas in rural areas where they're used to bartering or we're used to trading services, and that, of course, the value has to be fair. Okay. Basically, though, I say don't ever do that. Basically, one of the things I don't barter. Okay. I'm not going to provide behavior analytics services to someone so they can bake me cheesecakes, in return. It just opens up a whole can of worms to try to make it as professional as possible. The point is that you don't want to enter into these bartering situations. But if you do, there has to be written out. It has to be requested by the client or supervisee, and the value has to be fair, right? You're not going to trade 100 hours of behavior analytics services for an oil change. Okay, that would not be a fair value. Likewise, you're not going to do 10 hours of behavior analytics services for a new Jaguar, for a new car. Okay, that would be that the values would be misplaced there. So again, exercise caution in all of this. But yeah, so no sex, right? No sex with patients, supervisees, and all that kind of stuff. But there is that 2-year thing. You know, it has to have. If you do, 2 years after the relationship, professional relationship has ended, has formally ended. So 2.0 is, again, so that was all of 1.0. Now we're on to 2.0. The behavior technician's responsibility to clients, okay, or to patients, right? The behavior technician's responsibility to patients or clients, okay? The general rule here is that we are working for the best interest of our patient, okay? The best interest of the patient is the primary concern, which means that we're going to think of that patient first when we're discussing anything, okay? When we're going to think about what works is best for them.